Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. I appreciate it. Continue to share each other's stories. Today's episode is in partnership with The Scribes. You can check them out at thescribes.co. They have a wonderful mission of sending journals to students all across the world. So for every purchase you make, you are helping send and donate another journal to a child in need. But they have a bunch of different colors, a bunch of different types of journals, so go check them out. If you're interested, use katchupwithpod, code katchupwithpod for 20% off your purchase. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to catch up with Kestner. Today, I have a very special guest, Mike, co-founder of the Scribes company, a New York-based small business for journals that leads with a larger purpose and mission with its journals. But this episode's really special to me because it marks what I hope represents a long-lasting partnership between the Scribes Co. and the Catch Up with Kestner podcast. I've been using this journal for about a couple weeks now, and I absolutely love it. And I'm not just saying that. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Kestner. I'm glad you like your journal too. That's a good one there. I like the light blue.
Yeah, I absolutely love this. And I know there's a lot of options, so definitely check them out for everyone else. But Mike, I guess just to start off, really curious about your journey through this business, but also just you as a person and going through this journey of trying to reinvent yourself. I know that I've heard a little bit about your story, but I'm really excited to dig deeper into that. So walk me through those exact thoughts or that exact moment of how you and your friends came to this decision to really quit your 9-to-5 job and start your own small business.
Yeah, so I guess to back up a little bit, I have two partners at the Scribes, one girl named Pooja and a guy named Alden. The three of us were really good friends at our former company. So we used to work we're based out of New York City here, and we used to work for a financial technology company. So I met Alden probably at least going on 3 years now, and Pooja started a little bit later at this company.
Yeah.
But we were all around the same age. We were just really good friends, at work and outside of the office. We really built, a special bond, just the three of us. And I guess for how we started the Scribes, it's funny. We used to use Slack as kind of our internal communication method within the office, within the company. And so the three of us, we created a Slack channel called The Scribes. So before The Scribes was a journal company, it was just a Slack channel.
Right.
The reason we named it The Scribes was I guess, we were younger folks at the company, but all involved in like relatively strategic meetings. And we often felt like the note takers in the room. People would look around, people would be making decisions and like, who's keeping the minutes here? Like, Mike, are you keeping notes? Alden, are you keeping notes? That kind of stuff. And
Right.
so we jokingly, kind of felt bad for ourselves in a way, which, was dramatic of us to do, but we created this Slack channel called The Scribes, where it's just a place where we could talk, where we could catch up. And ultimately, it became much more. So, that was, we started the company back in November of 2019. So
really recent.
Coming, right at a year here. It's been a crazy year for sure. And we've learned a ton. We've gotten to be so much closer than we ever thought we would be. So we're right at a year, but really it started probably July or August of 2019. It's amazing how long it takes to get a business off the ground. There's just so much that goes into it, but, we've been hard at work for the last, year, designing what we think are really good products, but more importantly, supporting communities in need. And we've done that, in a dozen different ways. And I know we'll get to that. So, but that's kind of the backstory of the Scribes. What started as a Slack channel, ultimately became a lot more than that. So
that's awesome. Right. When I hear that story, and I've heard it a couple of times, I just really appreciate this idea of, we started out as fun. It was something that really bonded you three together, right? Alden and
Yeah.
Pooja, and just, you know, something that started out as a joke, but, finding a lot more bigger purpose in that and really just taking that off the ground. So it's really awesome to hear that you pretty much started around, when this pandemic really hit, right? Really launching
Yeah.
this small business. And, I'm really, really happy that I've gotten to see,
Yeah.
just like looking through your products and looking through the channels and the pages and, actually using the product myself. I can really see how it's really purposeful in terms of, we'll get into the mission and the different communities you serve, but just when it all comes together, I'm really proud to be able to use a product like this. So,
Yeah. And I didn't even mention, and I think it's important,
mhm.
so you asked how did we go from, starting the Scribes to quitting our 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So we started it in November. We were very, very,
Hmm.
very small. We were thrilled each time we got an order online or one of our corporate accounts or
Yeah.
something like that. But we actually, so I quit my job at this company in New York on March 13th of 2020. So
Hmm.
um, it was kind of a super pivotal time in the country. We quit our job that
Yeah.
Friday, and literally the next day we were in nationwide lockdowns
Yep.
and dealing with this just unprecedented pandemic. And
Hmm.
so I would say that our business was kind of born into a pandemic and faced a lot of adversity along the ways. I
Yeah.
definitely didn't expect to be operating the business from my apartment. As
Hmm.
Pooja, she operates the business from her sister's house in New Jersey, and Alden was up in his parents' house in Maine for most of the last 6 months.
Wow.
So it's been really, really challenging to start a business and come
Hmm.
together in the midst of all that's going on. But ultimately we believe that it's going to make us better. I think
Hmm.
this adversity serves us well, and it's kind of inspired us to you know to do as much as we can, especially on the give back side of things. And
Right.
people always like, I think we were asked once, how are you dealing with, everything that's going on in the world or whatever. And
Yeah.
um, we said it was pretty simple. If we continue to serve others, people will support us. And
Hmm.
we truly believe that. So that's how we've kind of been able to get through. But yeah, definitely, I wouldn't say it was an ideal time to start a business,
Yeah.
but certainly taught us a lot.
But that adversity you said is probably one of the most important parts, right? Because like you said, born out of a pandemic, a lot of people really suffered through the latter half of, or, the unfortunate part of losing their jobs or,
Hmm.
losing their stability. And, it's very inspiring just to hear that you were able to bring something so positive out of something so negative in people's life. And that's just, really awesome to hear. But
Yeah.
so thinking about, the Scribes and the company that you help build alongside the two other friends that you have, I know that the Scribes believes in supporting different causes and initiatives just as much as creating a
Mhm.
quality journal. So, why are you and the Scribes so passionate about serving educators and these different communities with sharing your products with them?
Yeah, I mean it's so it hits pretty close to home actually.
Hmm.
My younger sister, her name is Annie. She works in a juvenile detention center in the DC Alexandria area,
Hmm.
and I can't pinpoint exactly when it was, but it was sometime last year before we had started the company. She was telling the three of us that in this juvenile detention center, there's such a need for supplies and
Hmm.
just resources. And
Right.
she was telling us these kids that are incarcerated,
Hmm.
for whatever it may be. At the end of the day, they're 12 to 18 years old and they're incarcerated and they're away from their friends, they're away from their family, and they're
Right.
supposed to be in school. And I remember, vividly, she told us that she was going to Hobby Lobby and, these different office supply stores and buying composition notebooks and buying pencils
Yeah.
and things like that,
Wow.
just because the facility was, rather underfunded.
Hmm.
And so I remember at that point in time, Pooja and Alden and I, we made the decision to do this.
Hmm.
Why journals? That's kind of a different story, but
Yeah.
we said, we're going to sell journals. We want to start with journals. That's going to be our first kind of, product, and let's see if we can sell enough to make a significant gift back to this one juvenile detention center.
Nice.
So it
Wow.
started really, really small, really, really focused on supporting this one facility
Mm-hmm.
to give each one of their residents a journal of their own.
Wow.
And so that's how we started. And, that was kind of our guiding principle
Yeah.
from day one, was like, how are we going to support these kids? And then the doors just opened to, I mean, we're quite frankly so lucky.
Mm-hmm.
We met a guy named Ramiro Ocasio.
Mm-hmm.
He is the founder of an organization called the Foundation for Education in Honduras.
Oh, wow.
It's an amazing foundation. Ramiro is from Honduras,
Mm-hmm.
and each year he would just send as much money back to his hometown and his village as he
Right.
could over the holidays, over Christmas or something.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, he works at a law firm in New York, and ultimately he got the support of a few of his colleagues, and they came up with this foundation called FAY.
Mm-hmm.
And their mission is to just go into these communities where resources are super thin and build
Yeah.
schools. And they do so in a really interesting way. They actually employ, people in that community to build the schools. So all the contractors, they're not sending contractors from the United States down there to
Mm.
build the schools. They're employing
Nice.
people in the process. Um, and I remember, long story short, we got introduced to Ramiro as the founder of this foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And, he said, well, if you guys are ever interested in supporting FAY, journals or school supplies or things of that nature would be just so impactful to our students.
Mm-hmm.
They oftentimes
Definitely.
share a journal or share a composition notebook. And so the idea to provide each of them with their own would
Yeah.
be incredibly impactful. And so immediately after, giving back to the Juvenile Detention Center, we already had our eyes set on, the next cause we wanted to
Mm-hmm.
support. And so that kind of just, it allowed us, it was honestly just so inspiring to be working towards, we know that if we can make this business work, we can make this
Yeah.
give back work. And so that's kind of, that's happened a dozen times now. And,
Mm-hmm.
each time we're able to give back, we're equally inspired and equally grateful for
Yeah.
our own, you know, circumstances that we all, quite frankly, probably take for granted.
Yeah.
We're just so blessed in a lot of ways. But yeah, so I mean, to kind of sum it up, it started with my younger sister Annie, and it kind of
Mm-hmm.
evolved, and it just keeps evolving. And we truly believe that if we can give journals to students who might not have their own, we can create a more
Right.
thoughtful world. We can create a more centered world, and technology certainly isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
Our business wouldn't exist without a certain level of technology, but we do think that sometimes it's the simple things that help
Yep.
you think and create and dream and do all of those things. And so we think a journal can be really impactful.
I guess I'm just going to backtrack a little bit, talking about, how I came upon the Scribes myself. But,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of my audience knows that I'm a teacher here in Hawaii. And, just scrolling through social media and going through Instagram, I just came upon your journal, as an advertisement online. And so,
Yeah.
looking up journals, I'm a real advocate of writing things down. And I've had my own past journals where I, document all my notes and just things that I've learned from all of my wonderful guests through the podcast. But I was going through your products, and what really caught my eye was just your mission or your purpose behind your products, and hearing about your willingness and your desire to serve these different communities, serve different educators, more importantly. But just, when it comes down to it, students and kids, or just anyone who needs these supplies, and these different organizations that serve that purpose, like you said, with your sister at the juvenile center, or half across the world in Honduras for students in need. And that just really resonated with me because, being a teacher and understanding the importance of having the proper resources or the proper supplies to just learn and dream and inspire, like you said, I see that every day where kids don't have those resources. Here in Hawaii, it's the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. And, like it's a similar problem across the world where teachers are constantly paying out of their own pockets for supplies, or maybe Title I schools are underfunded in certain areas, and just all these different situations. I was thinking, wow, like I love what the Scribes are being a part of, and I love to see how they started out so recent, but they're making such a big impact across the world. I reached out, and then how this conversation really went along. And being a teacher personally, and then knowing that the Scribes were serving so many teachers across the world with their products, I just felt very called to communicate, and how this beautiful partnership came about. But when I think back to your sister's story of what it means to serve the students in those juvenile, or just those incarcerated children, or those incarcerated kids, it's I've never been in that type of environment per se, where I've seen kids struggle through their education in these centers. But I could only imagine being a teacher myself of how difficult that may
Yeah.
be, not having the proper supplies, or just having other things on their mind that may not be education at the center of it. And maybe it's just that moment of providing that small piece of, whether it's a notebook, rather, whether it's a small act of kindness, or whether it's that one item that another person needs, and taking the time out of our days to really think about, how can something that I'm a part of, or something that I'm using, or maybe something that you're not using, how can I give that to someone else that may need it? And when I think about the larger scale of how your sister Annie works in this center, she's constantly trying to improve the lives, and constantly trying to help better the position that these kids are in. And the fact that she was going to go out and buy her own supplies, or maybe go out
Yeah.
and put in her own time and resource to buy just basic composition books, and for you to really step up and provide a really quality journal that could really last and serve a bigger purpose than just writing things down. I think, right, the reason behind a lot of what's going on, of why we give back, is because we want to see something that really transcends just outside of a journal, or transcends outside of just our act of kindness, right? Maybe it's to help further someone's education. Maybe it's to make someone's life just a little bit happier, right? And I
Yeah.
think about, it's crazy to think that one thing led to another. And I really see that, for example, in my podcast, but just your story too, of starting off in New York and helping out in the DC area, but then branching off to across the world, right? I'm sure that
Yeah.
we have moments where we never really thought our sphere of influence, or our words or our acts, could really affect people across the world. But I'm just thinking about our conversation right now, all the way in Hawaii, talking to a new friend all the way in the New York area, right? A couple months ago, I never thought something like this would happen, right? But I've made a
Right.
new partnership, I've made a new friend, more importantly, but just growing our connection to really serve the different communities in our world. And I love how everyone has their own example of wanting to expand their network, just so that we can make the world a better place. But that's what I really think
Yeah.
about with this journal is, you know, one person can get a journal, they love the product, or they just love the mission, and they suggest that to other people, and they just continue this conversation of giving back, right? Because we're not just buying a product. When I buy your journal, I'm not just buying something that I can use. You said that you use these journals as a way to give back, whether that's money, or whether that's time, or whether that's energy, into different organizations in Faye, for example, or just helping out teachers and educators across the world. So I'm just very inspired hearing your story. I got inspired when I first heard it, and that's the point of why we do the things we do, right? Is to
Yeah.
continue to inspire, and continue to find ways that we can affect not just the communities that we're a part of, because when we find different people that understand what it means to serve before we can serve ourselves, it's really impactful, and it's really empowering that we can continue to do that for other people. So just thank you
Yeah,
so much for
absolutely.
what you do.
No, yeah. It's I mean, it's the best part of the job for sure. That's I think that's what inspires us most.
Mm,
I think I told you kind of on our intro call, but
yeah.
at the beginning of the coronavirus lockdowns and everything like that, back in maybe April or something, we
Hmm.
were really in a rut. And it was
Yeah.
just like, man, what are we going to do? Like, this is horrible. Like, the world is shut down.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure whose idea it was, but between the three of us, we decided, why don't we just, think about a group of people who probably have it worse than us right now. And our
Mm.
minds immediately went to teachers. The reason I went to teachers is because, and obviously teachers in America are so blessed in many ways, but
Hmm.
at that point in time, they were still in the classroom. this like
Yeah.
deadly, um, virus it was spreading. People didn't know exactly, you know, uh, necessarily the science behind it or anything. And
Right, right.
at that point in time, they were still going in, they were still teaching. They were maybe adapting to remote learning, which I know that
Mm-hmm.
you probably have experience with. It's
Yes.
super
Yeah.
challenging.
Yeah.
And so that day, we reached out to maybe like 100 or 200 teachers just on Instagram, just DMing people on Instagram
Yeah.
and said, hey, you don't know us, but we're a journal company and we'd like to send you a journal just to help you out, just to
Wow.
maybe inspire you a little bit to, pass on that random act of kindness to somebody
Mm-hmm.
else. And so I think that particular example kind of gets back to our point of, if we continue to serve others, people will support us. And so,
Yes.
when we're in a rut or unsure of what to do next, it kind of kicks back
Mm.
to that default of like, how can we help others? And,
It's awesome.
random acts of kindness, they circulate. So,
Mm-hmm.
let's get back to those, and, it'll inspire us to our next thing. So,
Yeah.
um,
That's pure beautiful, right? This idea of, I mean, we call them random acts of kindness, but then, I'd like to attest it to, we're just at the core of who we are, we want to serve, right? We want to continue to bring positivity and bring love or whatever that means for other people into the different spaces we're in. So whether it's random or intentional, right? Being kind is how we're going to progress and how we're really going to heal this world. And when I think of, right, you're the start of your business really coming out where businesses are closing down, where all these different,
yeah,
um, everyone's finances are in a rut, like you said. It's one thing to say, wow, like how are we going to start this business, and then how are we really going to expand our business? But for you and for the others, just the three of you, it was really centered or rooted in, if we're going to go through this pandemic together, if we're going to go through these hard times together, we might as well do it all together. And for you to just go
yeah,
out of your own decisions and really just message all these teachers and say, you know what, I don't know you. I don't know what your situations are. I know that you are being heroes in your communities by still serving your students and trying your best amidst the pandemic. I'm just going to give you this one drill, and hopefully it does, maybe it inspires you, maybe it continues to help you out in your educational journey. But, you know, for something that's, so difficult for businesses to do sometimes, where it's, we're just not going to worry about the finances. We're not going to worry about the money as much, because we really just want to help, as a basic
yeah,
term. And for you to just go out and do that, when the first time I heard that, and I was just thinking, what more can I be doing to continue to do that? Because, as teachers, we do that constantly. We do that every day, of just thinking about our
yeah,
students, sacrificing ourselves, obviously, but how can we continue to do that outside of our workspaces? How can we continue to think about sacrifice and what that means? Because ultimately, you three had to sacrifice something, right? Whether that was money, whether that was time, energy, right? Whether that was out of your business or personally, right? This idea of philanthropy and really sacrificing where it needs to, where we feel like there's a need. And I just love that. And hopefully this continues to spark the conversation for other people and spark the mindset of thinking something outside of yourself when it comes to not just products, not just out of business, but your time and your energy, how you can continue to serve others. And when you are in a rut, like you said, which direction are you going to take? Right. It could be very self-centered focus, or it could be really thinking about your communities and really going back into what you're saying. If I support these different communities, I will get that support back in some shape or form. And I truly believe that too, because what you give is what you get, like what they say.
yeah,
But that's
definitely.
just awesome to hear. So when I think about, right, when I think about business, I'm still learning about the business aspect myself, and commercial and whatnot, or e-commerce and everything. But I believe that a business really can serve as a mirror into the heart of its founders. So where do you see the characters and the personalities represented in your company and in your members that consumers may not see or understand when considering your product?
Yeah. So I think all of us, the three of us, we each bring different skill sets
Yeah.
and different kind of philosophies to the business.
Hmm.
But I think at our core, we are all just naturally curious and entrepreneurial, and that's
Yeah.
how our friendship grew to where it is today. But I myself, I come from a family of small business. So my dad
Wow.
operates a small business, and my mom's always helped him in that endeavor. And
Hmm.
Pooja, she comes from a very similar situation. Her family operates small businesses in New Jersey.
Wow.
Alden, very similar situation. And so we all kind of were, entrepreneurial, at heart. And, like I said, we all bring different skill sets to the
Yeah.
table as well. I mean, I think I probably consider myself, somebody who spends more time on like the sales and marketing front.
Hmm.
Alden is just uber creative, and everything we put out into the world, whether it's an
Yeah.
ad or a social post or a
Mm.
product, Alden has had his hand in designing that product or
Yeah.
creative. So he's just, I mean, he's incredibly gifted, and so he brings that creative aspect. We're actually,
Hmm.
in a few weeks, we'll be totally we're launching a totally new website. It was a
Wow.
huge effort on Alden's side, but it
Hmm.
was a great learning experience for him. And I think that's that kind of gets back to the point of just being curious. I think we
Yeah.
each wanted to like kind of flex the muscles we had or we didn't even know we had to try these
Hmm.
new things. And so I think we were each just curious and willing to try new things. But
Yeah.
and then Pooja, she's definitely kind of our glue person. She does a lot of the behind the scene work
Hmm.
that um, you know customers have just gotten used to, quite frankly,
Yeah.
in like the e-commerce world. When you purchase something from our website and you get that email, like the
Yeah.
order confirmation email, Pooja had something to do with that. When you get an
Uh-huh.
email in 2 weeks asking you for a review of our products, she had
Yeah.
something to do with that. And so she has really done a good job of kind of all of those kind of operational behind the scenes things. And I think she really takes pride in that. So we
Mm.
each have different skill sets.
Yeah.
And I think, um, they complement them well. It's not to say that we don't have disagreements
Yeah.
or, fights or
Yeah.
areas, where we can't see eye to eye, but ultimately we all come together just because we started this thing as friends. We're
Hmm.
going to continue to be friends long after this.
Yeah.
And so ultimately it comes down to that. But I think we all have just an immense amount of respect for each other. And that's where it all starts. I think, during the last 6 or 7 months, if you don't have
Yeah.
respect for your colleagues or
Mm.
you don't, um, aren't transparent and communicating,
Right.
often and well, then it's not going to work. We're
Yeah.
working in 3 different states for most of this,
It's
for most of
true.
the last 6 months, and so we just relied on each other to get the work done that we each needed to do, and we
Hmm.
were, we still try to communicate as best we can throughout it all. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I'm I don't have my own business per se, but when I'm thinking about, other friends or other colleagues that are really wanting to take the next step, right? What that means, whatever that means, outside of maybe their 9 to 5 job or just their own special hobby, or maybe transitioning into a new career, right? It's thinking about how am I going to start this small business, right? Hearing your story and thinking about all my friends that are starting their own small businesses or growing in their own small businesses, it's really understanding this idea. How do we keep expanding? How do we keep serving? How do we keep providing products that other people are going to want to use or, come accustomed to? And I loved how what I got from your 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 story was that each person in this trio of friends, each person has their own skill set. Each person has their
yeah,
own, not just necessarily desires, but their own unique personality and what they're really good at. But also, like you said, flexing muscles that you didn't know you had. And everyone has those different types of muscles or those different types of gifts and skill sets that really just make them who they are. But now they can implement that and they can integrate that into a small business, or they can really learn to stay curious or evolve and use those different things that we characteristics or ideas or creative notions that we can put into a business or that we can put into an organization. And so that's something that I really can relate to also because, I love sharing stories. I love talking with other people, and that's really what really came about this podcast. But when I think about a business too, everyone has different skill sets, and how are you going to leverage those different skill sets so that everyone has a piece in the pie of just creating something so beautiful. So when I think about all my friends out there or just people that are watching, right? If you're on that cusp of trying to expand or trying to initiate a small business or just wanting to grow a small project or a passion project, it's really try to surround yourself with people that are going to challenge you, but also, find different people that are going to help you in your journey by providing skills or ideas that you necessarily wouldn't have thought about, right? It's this whole idea of surrounding yourself with people maybe that you don't always agree with, or maybe that you are not
Yeah.
always in the same conversation with, because they're going to provide those different ideas, right? You don't want to always be surrounded by like-minded people because, right, you stay in this bubble or in this chamber, for example. So I'm just thinking about the beauty of using not just your friends, but people that you are coming into friendship with, and understanding their story, understanding their lives, and understanding their skills so that you can continue to feed off one another. And I really think that's a huge part of business, is really being close, or being, having strong relationships at the center of it, and learning how you can leverage that, or learning how you can use those different personalities and progress your business. Because at the end of it, right, a tight knit group means, a tight business at the core, and then that in itself will grow into ways that you cannot see in the future, right? But it really starts with having a strong group. It really does start with having a friendship above all. You were
Yeah.
coworkers before, and you were right, but you really want to center it around the people and the relationships so that it really shows through your products. Because like you said, if Pooja's really close group with you two as colleagues, or you two as friends, and you're really feeding off one another, she can provide that energy or provide that mindset in her customers, right? When she's sending
Yeah.
out these emails, when she's really trying to be customer oriented, it really starts with having a strong relationship within the company so that she can provide that energy, or provide those moments of positivity in our products, or just in our communication, right? Because if we are working in spaces that we're not necessarily happy about, or we're not necessarily connected to, it's going to show in our actions, and it's going to show in our communication, right? If you're having a bad day at work, that might, manifest, or that might show in the different conversations that you're going to have later in the day. So it really does depend on who you surround yourself with. And so you three being so close, and growing in your relationship, you're able to grow alongside in the Scribes as a company, right? And really continue to provide that relationship building, and continue to inspire through your product. So
Yeah.
that's just really something that I like to think about on not just a daily basis, because I'm learning more every day, but now that I can continue to think about, it really does come down to relationships. It really does come down to understanding the skills and the stories of people around you, so that you can come together and maybe start something, whether that's right a business or not, and just learning how to lead with positivity in that. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, when I think about businesses in general, when I think about maybe someone that's thinking about starting a small business, Mike, for someone that is on the fence of wanting to begin their own small business, or even in the early stages like the Scribes are, what specifically helped you three persist amidst the hard times that we're in?
Well, I think it starts with like just realizing that you're not in control of the world.
Yeah,
You have to like let that go, but you have to realize too that you are in control over your
mm,
attitude
there
and
you
like
go.
the immediate actions that you're going to take.
Yeah,
I think that's like really kind of important with us. Like it's definitely not easy. I mean, I come
yeah,
to our Wednesday afternoon call with bad attitude sometimes. So does
mm-hmm,
Alden. So does Pooja.
yeah,
And like, I think we do a good job of reminding ourselves that, we're not in control of whatever's happening out there in the world, but we can't control our attitude and like nothing's going to progress if
Mm.
you come, with a bad attitude, or
Yeah.
you're feeling sorry for yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely not easy, but it's something you have to do. It's not easy to be creative. That's one thing that I learned about starting a business, that I thought starting a business meant, you take an idea and you execute upon it, and then, like, as an owner operator, you're more focused on, like, these high level things that
Mm.
you're kind of monitoring the situation, but
Right.
you're not in fact doing that. Like, when you're at our level of scale, which is really, really small, you
Yeah,
constantly have to be creating. You constantly have to be, creative. And so
definitely.
it's about just like pushing yourself to, well, if we take the day off today, that's going to hurt us 2 weeks from now. Like, that's how we kind of think about it. It's like,
Yeah.
if we don't pursue this opportunity now, a few weeks from now, it's going to be, slow, and
Mm.
it's because we didn't pursue that opportunity then. So, I think, just staying positive, realizing that you're not in control of the surrounding situations, but you're in control of your own attitude,
Right.
being creative, just, continuing to push yourself. And then, as as a group with the three of us,
Yeah.
like I said, transparency and, communication is obviously important, but we want to
Mm-hmm.
go a step further with that, and we want to include our customers in these conversations that we're having. So it's
Love
actually
it.
funny. This morning, every Sunday morning, we send out an email to all of our customers. It's,
Mm-hmm.
part of our newsletter called Sunday with the Scribes.
Yeah.
Um, the reason we did this, and this week was week number 22. So it's crazy to think that we've even been
Wow.
doing something for 22 consecutive weeks, but like,
Yeah.
that's consistency. And so we're proud of
Yeah.
that. But the reason we started this newsletter 22 weeks ago was not to sell our products on Sunday mornings, or,
Mm.
push offers on our customers necessarily. It
Yeah.
was to communicate with our customers, and be transparent and like what's going on with our business.
Wow.
And it gets back to, if we can include people in our day to day and how we're thinking about things, asking for feedback,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be better because of it. And so, I think that was a really, when we thought of it, we just thought we were creating a newsletter, but really it
Yeah.
was, it was a way to stay in touch with our customers,
Mm.
and, be transparent and, communicate openly. And it's been just an amazing channel for us. Um, and I think too, and just like, I know we're kind of going on the newsletter path here, but
All good.
so many newsletters, and it's on the brain because it's Sunday, but so many
Yeah.
newsletters, here's promo code this and that to buy,
Right.
or they're pushing sales or something.
Mm-hmm.
And what we try to be really intentional with our newsletter to be, it's Sunday with the Scribes. At the top of the newsletter, it's a productivity tip, or just something small, something
Right.
that's not going to take you any longer than 30 seconds to read, but
Mm.
hopefully it makes your day a little bit better. And
Wow.
then down in the bottom of the newsletter, it's what's in our journal. And that's where, like I said, we try to open up to our customers just really quickly once a week
Nice.
and say,
Yeah.
here's what we have going on. And oftentimes it's like, please help us. We're looking for feedback on this new product. And it's amazing the responses we get.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's, specifically with the newsletter, it's, I think it's kind of a small example of how our business has grown. But I remember when we sent the
Yeah.
first newsletter out 22 weeks ago, we sent it to about 100 people, and mostly friends and family for that matter.
Yeah.
And now I think today it went out to a few thousand people. And so
Wow.
it's just crazy to see how that's grown, and how important it is. But yeah, I think, to get back to your question, I think,
Mm-hmm.
what's kept us going during these times is just, you control your attitude,
Yeah.
leave the bad attitude at the door, try
Mm.
to do your best, and, just try to constantly be creative and adapt to what's going on around you.
Yeah. This idea of flexibility is so important, right? Because when we started off in a difficult situation, or we're put in a difficult situation, I should say, right? Our attitude really does make a difference. And I was thinking about this actually a couple days
Totally.
ago of, where does your attitude lie, and how is that attitude not going to just affect you as a person, but the people around you and the people that you may not interact with, right? Because mentality obviously is a huge part of it. Attitude is a huge part of it, right? But when those attitudes or those mentalities turn into your actions, right? How are your actions really going to affect the people around you? And are you going to have a mindset that's open-minded? Are you going to have a growth mindset? Are you going to be flexible in these different hard situations? Or are you just going to really be self-centered and really just focus on what's right in front of you? And I think it's really important that, we're all in different situations, whether you're in a business or not. And right, you have to be flexible or not flexible in certain situations, depending on what you're doing. But this idea of looking past of maybe what's right in front of you, because maybe what's right in front of you is you're not selling products, or maybe what's right in front of you is you're not reaching customers, or maybe it's, you're not communicating with customers, right? The list goes on and on. But, thinking back to the newsletter, like you just said, I want to continue, or we want to continue to stay connected with our customers, stay connected in some sort of way, knowing that everyone's going through their own struggles. Everyone's going through their own life. What can I do to provide outside of just my physical product? And it's beautiful that this newsletter has gone
Yeah.
from 100 to 1,000 people, because it's just giving the scribes an opportunity to share things that maybe you're thinking about on a daily basis in your journals, or just give an example of how we can continue to reach other people through our business, right? I think a lot of it, a lot of people could say that I need to be thinking about the customers. I need to be thinking about sales. And that's really important too, right? We don't want to neglect that fact. But as small businesses or small entities or just small projects, right? We're starting from the ground up, and, we have to work every single day. And a lot of that has to be centered around continuing to reach customers, continuing to reach an audience that, we're providing a service, or we're providing something that we feel like is very meaningful and that we can make an impact, right? And when you're starting off right at the bottom, that's really what you got to think about, is just how can I continue to reach people that are going to hear this message, or that are going to hear this product and really find a reason to engage with us. And I think that newsletter is such a great example that I want to continue to think about and evolve for not just my podcast, but, suggestions of how I can continue to reach people. So I think that's something that I can really take out of it, is finding a way to stay in touch, right? Because
Yeah.
our products will always be our products, whether that's a physical product, whether that's, an idea, it will reach the different spaces that it will reach. But other than that, taking it a step further, what else can we do, right? Because people will buy into whatever we're talking about. Some people will find meaning in whatever we're saying, or whatever we're providing for others. But what else is there outside of that? Am I going to try and take that extra effort to try and connect with a customer? Am I going to try that extra step in communicating outside of just my normal routine, right? And I think it's awesome to hear that there are, that mindset is behind the scribes, right? Of just being very intentional and being very, cautious or conscious of our customers and just what they're going through, but also just trying to provide, whether it's that small tip, like you said, of just trying to make someone's day, and, push this narrative of bringing positivity, or bringing about change in our lifestyles. And, we're all going through different things and difficult things as of right now, but for us that are privileged enough to be able to think about other people, because, some people are not privileged in that sense where, they're thinking about themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for us that have these spaces that we can turn into something beautiful, right? How are we going to use those different spaces? So I just like how that's one example that I can take from this, and maybe it's something for someone else of, how are you going
Yeah.
to use your platform? How are you going to use your, whether that's social media, or whether that's your business, or whether that's at work, of just, your resources. How can we use our time and our energy to make sure that we're making other people's lives more meaningful and more intentional? So definitely a good thing going
Yeah.
on.
And I think too that like when you're as small as we are, like from
Mhm.
a business perspective, making that extra effort with each one of your customers
Right.
is what's gonna just propel you forward. I remember,
Yeah.
and we've all done it, the three of us. It's like we've hand delivered journals to people's homes if they were
Yeah.
nearby, just so we could, see them and shake their hand when we dropped it off. And,
Yeah.
you get a little bit of FaceTime, or
Mm-hmm.
I remember we were still in our old company. This is back in like January or February. But one of our potential corporate customers, so somebody who wanted to buy a fair amount, very, very
Mm-hmm.
important to us. They reached out to us and said, "Hey, we need a few journal samples. We have some people coming into the office." And I remember we sent an empty Uber to my apartment. We got somebody to go into my apartment, grab a few journals, and put them in the empty Uber to
Wow.
take to this person's office. And we were all like at our 9 to 5 and like
Yeah.
kind of frantically like, how are we going to get this guy these samples? And we just went to the end of the earth to pull that off.
Mm.
And I think that that extra effort just shows that potential customer or that
Wow.
potential partner, or it just shows you that you care so much about what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. And so I think for us, it's we respond to every Facebook comment and
Yeah.
every you know customer. If they write in, they're going to have an email
Yeah.
back in 5 minutes on a Sunday night. Like, to us,
Wow.
that's so important right now. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that goes for you, and it goes for everybody who's starting something.
Mm-hmm.
Treating those early customers really well, they'll
Mm-hmm.
turn those people into customers for life, and they'll be the
Yeah.
best brand ambassadors that you could imagine. So yeah, that's been super important for us. And each of us has sacrificed a lot
Definitely.
to make a good impression on those people, but it's very important.
But that's why it's so important to support small businesses and support these,
Yeah,
mom and pop shops or whatever, and these, whether it's local restaurants, and right, the list goes on and on, but supporting these small businesses because they're just like you and I in a sense of they're trying to create something that's meaningful or purposeful for consumers or for audience or for customers, right? And you can look at it through the lens of customers, but these small businesses really try to make it a family. And that's something that's really important of why
yeah,
I
totally.
continue to support local businesses, local restaurants, small businesses every day because they're just like me, right? They want to continue to provide something meaningful for someone else. And it's so beautiful to find people a part of that because it really is family oriented. It's really about growing a family or growing not just a service, but growing this network of people that you care about and that you will come to care about. And I love how you said it really does taking out that extra step because small businesses really don't have the large capacity or like the large manufacturing and all these different right
Yeah, totally.
vocabulary or these ideas that other corporations or organizations have. And so what we have in our control is what can we use our direct time with, what can we use our direct energy with. And a lot of that does take a lot of sacrifice, a lot of that does take a lot of time, but we don't do it out of right maybe our own benefit, but it's because we understand that someone needs something that we have and we want to provide that, and we want to continue
Yeah,
to keep those people in so that they know that we care about them, and then that will create in itself or that will further in itself, right? Like how you said, sending out a couple journals to those early customers, finding a way to make sure that you respond to Facebook, Instagram messages, right, as soon as you can, in this moment of them feeling acknowledged and feeling recognized for their need, they're going to continue to keep coming back. But not just because they want or like your product, but because they feel cared for, they feel that they are
yeah,
being acknowledged in their different areas, and that will continue to push forward in different ways that we cannot imagine, right? So it's those little small steps for other people that may seem well that's something that maybe that they're used to, but for us it does take a lot of time, but we do it because out of our own intention to serve other people and to make sure that they're feeling cared for. And I think that's really nice that there's a lot of things that I like about the Scribes, right, when it comes to serving these different initiatives or these different missions of giving back and donating or whatnot, but also just you as people, for you three as people, just coming to know you not just as partners but also as friends of we're all doing the same, we're all being a part of the same journey, we're all trying to grow something from scratch per se and really make
yeah,
it into something that's really meaningful and impactful in people's lives, but not just saying those words but actually doing the actions, right? Making sure that my audience or my customers know that they are cared for, that they are being thought about whether it's asking for reviews, whether it's, all these different things that we talked about, making it very known and making it very visible for people to say, yeah, the scribes definitely care about their customers, or right, the podcast is thinking about people in mind, or whatever the case may be. So that's just something that I really like hearing
Yeah.
about.
There's a lot of like so much, consumers have so many choices these days,
Yeah,
right? It's like,
definitely.
they could listen to a million different podcasts. They could buy, a million different journals from a million different websites. So
Yeah.
like, what are you going to do to win that customer over to begin
Mm,
with? And how are you going to retain
right.
them? And I think it's just, you know, making an effort and making them feel like, uh, and that's truly what we believe. It's like, each customer is an opportunity for us to, to make somebody's day, to sell them something that we're really proud of. And
Yeah.
uh, that's really important, especially, there's so many, I mean, there's just the choices we have in America, especially
Yep.
online. It's just,
Yeah.
you can have anything you want in your door, 2 days from now. So I don't know about in Hawaii though. I don't know if you get 2 day shipping from Amazon in Hawaii, but
Not as not
might be
as
a little
quick.
delayed for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, not as quick.
But definitely something to appreciate being, in the middle of the
Yeah,
ocean. But no, I love that too, right? It's what am I going to do to stand out too, right? What am I going to
yeah,
do that's not just product wise or design wise, right? It's that interaction too, right? Whether it's the newsletter, whether it's reaching out through messaging, whether it's asking for reviews and responding, in a timely manner. It's just these different steps, like you said, of what is going to make me stand out in a world where you can buy anything, anywhere, at any time, at the press of a button on your phone or your computer, right? It's, I
right.
can find so many other journals, right, to be a part of, and choosing specifically the scribes to to be a part of my journaling or reflective process. I'm proud of that, right? And I hope
Yeah,
that other people come to find whatever that is, finding that maybe that product or that organization or that company that they can really buy into and really grow to be a part of, and continue to use those different products and find meaning out of it, because we can always buy from larger organizations or larger corporations, but really thinking about the small businesses and how we can continue to support locally and really invest our time and money into that. Because I know maybe small businesses or local restaurants, all right, small businesses can be a little bit more pricier when it comes to costs, right? And those different things that go into that. But at the end of it, it's where's your money going toward, right? And when you know that you
yeah,
support small businesses, when you support local businesses or businesses that have a mission like the scribes, you know where your money's going toward, right? It's not just going into products, it's not just going into design, but it's going into serving, the company, and that's going to serve the different organizations or missions that they're a part of. So that's something that I'm a huge advocate for, like when you think of restaurants, small businesses with restaurants, the money's going toward those different families to provide. And so that's something that
yeah,
we always have to be conscious about, of supporting the people that are in our communities directly, because we can buy things half across the world, or we can buy things from, larger companies all the time, out of convenience or whatever reason. But maybe when you can, taking the time to really support those companies in your communities, or just those companies that you've, or businesses I should say, that you've come to be a part of, or at least coming to know. So that's something that we should all take away from that. But Mike, so thinking about, the future of the scribes, or just, your missions or your interest as a group, if you could partner with any other organization or movement moving forward, what would it be, or who would it be, and why?
so I have a few examples here,
Yeah.
and I'll kind of get into these. But
Hmm.
as far as the kind of the give back piece to our business, I think partnering um, with public schools, specifically Title I schools,
There you
is
go.
really our focus.
Hmm.
Reason so, I mean, there's obvious reasons, but for those who don't know, the Title I schools
Yeah.
obviously rely, much more on, I guess, federal funds, and might
Yeah.
not have the budget that others
Yeah.
do. But just their ability to distribute too
Mm,
is really important to us. So, when we donate journals or donate school supplies or, whatever it may be, we know that, those schools can get those products into the hands of our students.
yeah.
And so obviously, we support a number of nonprofits, but,
Yeah.
the ability for them to distribute the resources to the children
Hmm.
who need it most is super important. So obviously we want to focus on public schools, especially Title I schools.
Definitely.
FAY is a perfect example of
Yeah.
an organization that aligns so well with us. I mean, they
Hmm.
literally are building schools in
Yeah.
rural Honduras where
Hmm.
resources are the kind of the resource disparity is unimaginable for most of
Yeah.
us. And so their mission aligns perfectly with ours. Another really interesting example of an organization or a person that we'd like to work with. So over the last 6 months or so, we've actually worked with two professional athletes. We've
Wow.
worked with Malcolm Butler, who is a cornerback for the Tennessee Titans,
Hmm.
won a few Super Bowls, and he's a role model to so many. As
Wow.
well as Levi Wallace, who Levi Wallace is a football player for the Buffalo Bills. And so we've, different, we got connected with both of these guys through different channels, but
Hmm.
ultimately, the partnership with them was they actually purchased a bunch of journals from us. We doubled the amount that they purchased and we donated it back to the
Wow.
cause of their choice. So for both of those guys, they donated, hundreds of journals back to the schools that they attended when they were young. And the reason we think these partnerships are so powerful is just the influence that these, guys or girls have. They're
Yeah.
such role models, and they're obviously role models. You know, part of it's because they're professional athletes and they're incredibly gifted, but
Yeah.
kids really look up to them. And so
Hmm.
if a kid sees Malcolm Butler writing in his journal at night, that kid might
Wow.
say, hey, I need to do the same because Malcolm Butler does that. And we think
Yeah.
that we're really helping out in that regard. And then lastly, a company that we really look up to um, is a company called Bombas. I don't know if you've
Mm.
ever heard of Bombas, but it's a sock
No.
company.
Yeah.
And I mean, socks have to be one of the most boring things to sell. It's like, you can, they're just, you think about their utility and that's about it. You
Hmm.
don't think of fun designs or anything like that
Yeah.
necessarily. And Bombas is a company who actually makes it enjoyable to buy socks. And so
Wow.
not only do they have an incredible mission, they're a certified B Corp, which means they've gone through a lot of
Hmm.
vetting, and they do such a good job of giving back. I think Bombas, for every pair they sell, they donate one to the homeless community
Wow.
because socks are supposedly the number one requested item from the
Mm.
homeless community, as you can imagine.
Wow.
Um, but just everything they do, as far as their brand, their website, their mission, their
Yeah.
customer service, it seems like they really they do it all well. And they've made buying socks something that's kind of enjoyable as a consumer. And so we think that there's a lot that we can do to improve on our
Yeah.
kind of customer experience and everything. But they're definitely a company that we look up to. So
Hmm.
I think the future of the Scribes is bright. I think
Yeah.
we're really excited to tackle all the challenges that we face. But
Yeah.
as far as kind of our mission and how we carry ourselves, definitely want to get more and more involved with the public school system and supporting kids
Thank you. Yeah.
directly. And teachers too. I mean, you
Hmm.
mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, but
Yeah.
one of the reasons we were so inspired to support teachers is because we know that teachers come out of their pocket for
Yeah.
$500 to $600 a year for school supplies and things like that.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to help. Like I said, Faye, it's a wonderful organization that we're going to
Yep.
continue to support. These athletes are incredible role models that
Yeah.
can change so many lives just with
Mm.
their words. So
Yeah.
we definitely want to work with more professional athletes and
Mm.
people like that. And then, yeah, like a company we look up to, I'd say Bombas is a really good example. So
No, I just want to start off by saying thank you for making, your first response when I asked that question was teachers, educators, Title I schools.
yeah,
And, it's very intuitive to think about, oh yeah, journals, students, or people that need notebooks or whatever. But when it really comes down to it, this idea of providing where there's a need, and providing where there's a need, teachers need journals, teachers need school supplies, or whatever the case may be. And I just thank you
Yeah.
for thinking about educators and having educators in mind. I know that you have friends and family that work in education, but you know, regardless of that fact, it's understanding that whether you have friends that are teachers, whether you're a teacher yourself, and understanding that teachers are such a pivotal part of how our society is built, and bringing up the next generation of students, right, and teaching them in the ways that we want to raise our own children. Teachers are so important, and continuing to think about them. I'm not biased at all, right, but just thinking about what it now that I have a better understanding, being a teacher myself for the past few years, prior to being a teacher, I could have never imagined what my teachers had to go through in the different spaces. So just
Yeah.
coming back to it, it's thank you for providing back to educators, but also thinking about how you can grow your influence. And when you think about maybe it's athletes, maybe it's professional professionals in general, of just finding ways that we can continue to not just serve the different communities through our products, but finding different people that are going to buy into our mission. Because that's just something that I really appreciate about the Scribes, is just going back to the mission and going back to supporting something outside of just buying a product, right? It's, when I
Right.
buy a product from the Scribes, I know that some of that money or some of that energy is going into distributing or donating journals or distributing supplies to kids that need it, teachers that need it, professionals that need it, and then in the end, sharing this idea of giving back to the community. But that's one thing I love, and I'm really glad and fortunate that to hear that story, that the Scribes is continuing to find people that are buying into this mission, because that's just something I'm you know starting to feel a part of. And growing as a growing as a professional, growing as a podcaster, just being able to talk about these wonderful different stories that people that I'm meeting across the world, right? And it's just good to continue to push these different narratives of impacting other people. So, if you're
Yeah.
also looking for different stocks too that also support a mission of supporting homeless
Yeah.
people like Bombas, that's awesome. I'll definitely go and check them out. But this idea of using our spaces and using our platforms and using our businesses, not just for monetary purposes, but also really thinking about these products or these words or these stories can really inspire other people, or they can really make change when the right person hears it. Because we don't know the reach, we will never know the extent of where our products go to or our words reach. But in the end, it's going to make a difference in someone's life ultimately, whether it's small or big. And that's something that we really hold on to, and I'm sure the Scribes hold on to as well. Of my journal can go half across the world, and it might just be a journal for some people, but it might actually make a huge difference to some kid or to some adult that really just needed that space to write down their own ideas, or help find a tool to further their education, for example, or just even their personal thoughts, right? So
Yeah.
that's why I'm a strong, not just believer, but a strong advocate for, not just supporting the Scribes, but also just, what are you buying into when you buy into these products? Really finding those different missions and those different causes, knowing that when you buy this, it's much more than just a product. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Definitely.
But Mike, we've talked so much about, the story of how the Scribe started upon, and we talked so much about believing in this idea of taking the extra step to not just sell your product, but also to care for your consumers and care for your customers. But also knowing that our different platforms and our different businesses and our different projects can make such a big difference when we think about the other person and who we're serving and how we can continue that. But also talking about the steps of the future and where we really see our impact growing. And so I just want to say, starting off, thank you so much for this partnership of growing alongside with my podcast. Of for everyone that's watching, definitely go out and buy a journal or two, or even the different projects that they're coming up with. If not just providing us a product for yourself, but also knowing that you are supporting educators or you're supporting a cause at the end of it. But thank you for the partnership. for the scribes, but also just thank you for the time of spending, sharing these stories with me and really providing something else different for the audience today. So just thank you, Mike.
Yeah, well, thank you. I've really gotten to, enjoy our friendship and your
Yeah,
podcast, and I look forward to all the cool stories you're going to be telling in the weeks to come. So thank you for having me.
of course. For everyone else, like I said, support the scribes. I put the link in below. Use code katchupwithpod for 20% off. But at the end of it, it's not just for grabbing a journal. It's also supporting the different causes that they have and all the causes and organizations and nonprofits that they'll support in the future. So go ahead, check them out, share the link. But thank you so much for listening today, everyone. Mike, until the next time, I'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks.